Terrific to see all of you here this morning. And I think I'm not seeing anyone in the process of getting into the room at the moment, so we will get started. Again, I'm Sarah Puritan. I'm Executive Director of the New Jersey Historical Commission. And I'm really delighted that all of you can be with us today for one of our quarterly updates for Revolution NJ. Just a couple of housekeeping items to start with. We do ask you, if you will, to mute yourself so that we don't get background noise from individual participants. That would be terrific. And also, we are on GoToMeeting today, as you all clearly know. And you should be able to toggle between a couple of different settings for how you'd like to view this webinar today. You can click View Everyone. You can click Who's Talking. You can click Hide Everyone. So, do take advantage of those options to set it to whatever you prefer to use in viewing today's webinar. The webinar is being recorded, by the way, so we will post it online later. So if you have friends and colleagues who can't be with us today but want to catch up later, we really encourage you to let them know that it is recorded and will be up online later this week. So I wanted to just make one observation before introducing my terrific colleague from Crossroads, and that is just to say this is an exciting update because we've really entered into a new phase of work in preparing for this anniversary, and we're really excited to share with you some of the work that's been going on. So lots to share. And let me now introduce my counterpart from Crossroads at the American Revolution, Janice Salinger, just to say welcome.
I'd like to welcome you. I'll be speaking a little bit later in the program, and thank you so much for being here with us today. We'll be addressing questions and answers at the end of the presentations.
Thank you so much, Janice. Let me just acknowledge, too, that I am delighted that Dr. Lauren Zyrick has joined us today. She is our Assistant Secretary of State at the Department of State, and I'm just delighted, Lauren, that you could be with us today and hear all of the work that's ongoing for this, this initiative. All right, so all that having been said, we're going to dive into a quick update next on what the Historical Commission has been focused on with our colleagues at Crossroads. So, Greer, I think we can advance to the next slide. And here's what we're going to offer you today. First, we're going to give you that update on our working groups. We have also some professional development sessions that are well underway in preparation. We will get an update from Crossroads on the campaign feasibility study project that they're really focused on right now. And then we have a terrific presentation planned for you from Princeton Partners on communications and branding. And then as Janice mentioned, if you do have questions, we will leave time at the end for discussion, and feel free to use our chat function as well if you have questions and thoughts that you'd like to share with everyone. And the other thing I always like to welcome you to do too is if you want to say hello in the chat and tell everybody who you are and where you're from, we'd love to see that as well. So Greer, we can go to the next slide. I do want to let you know that our webmaster today is Greer Luce, so we all owe her a debt of thanks for guiding us through the tech part of this today. And I'll let Janice introduce her team from Crossroads, but I'll also note that we have several commission staff with us today. Mark Lawrence will be speaking in a moment, and I do see quickly that we had Noelle Lorraine Williams here, as well as Janet Field. So I hope I caught everybody. In addition, by the way, we do have our co-chairs of the Advisory Council here too. We have Christian Oberzell-Kulfen and Linda Epps, so welcome to all of you. So I've mentioned to you that this is an exciting update because we've kind of taken a step into a new phase of work And that's really reflected by some of these updates you're going to get. And right now, I'm delighted to let you know that our 5 working groups have had their first meeting last week. All 5 of them had initial meetings, which is really exciting because they are poised to dig right into envisioning initiatives that we're going to undertake as part of Revolution NJ. So you can see the 5 different working groups: events and reenactments, education, scholarly and public programming, civic and community engagement, and heritage tourism and economic development. So we're all thrilled, and thank you to working group members, some of whom are on the webinar today, for sharing your time and your expertise in this really exciting visioning phase now of this initiative. So Greer, I think you can advance. And now I'm going to ask Mark Lawrence to give us a brief update on his work that he's been undertaking on our professional development series. So Mark, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Sarah. How's everyone doing? Thank you so much for joining us today. As Sarah mentioned, we are now moving forward with our professional development series. We're envisioning this as a 3-part offering for the public. And the part that we're developing right now is our webinar initiative, which is going to be produced by Bob Suter, who's going to take our 7 key interpretive themes that we've outlined in our interpretive framework and create this unified look and this unified feel for it so that we can store it online and create a database for folks who would like to create interpretive programming that fits within the larger strategic framework and the interpretive framework of Revolution NJ. We're really excited to offer this to the public, and we're going to be working with 7 scholars. Greer, can you please go to the next slide? The 7 scholars each will take one key theme and provide a general overview of the key theme, and then provide a little bit of a case study of how it can be applied to organizations throughout the state. We picked scholars who are coming from the American Revolution all the way up to the present in their subject matter that they study and that they have expertise in. We're really hoping to provide that whole 250-year examination using that interpretive framework as our basis. And so the 7 scholars we particularly have are Dr. Martha Jones, who will be doing political participation. This is really going to be looking at the key themes of how folks have been included and excluded in the political realms within the founding of the United States. We have Dr. Jameson Sweet from Rutgers University doing property and sovereignty, specifically looking at these concepts from an indigenous perspective. Dr. Kathleen Lopez will be looking at the movement of people, examining and exploring the migration of individuals, immigrant experiences, but also looking at diasporic communities in the US. We have Dr. Elena E. Roberts, who will be providing an overview of exclusion and inclusion, looking at the history of intersectional identities and how they were experienced throughout history. It looks like it's a little cut off, but what we have on the bottom, we have Dr. Andrew Shankman, who's going to be looking at revolutionary ideals, really exploring the context and nuance of the American Revolution and what those ideas are. We'll have Dr. James Gigantino look at New Jersey as a battleground. This will be the topic that explores just the complicated relationships between diverse viewpoints and ideologies. Specifically, he will be working within the loyalist and patriotic camp of the American Revolution and exploring how some of these divisions have really percolated throughout time. And then for our last key theme, we have Dr. Edward Gonzalez-Tennant, who is going to be examining the historical process and really providing a rich overview of what does it mean to do history and what does history mean for folks today? How do we look at resources and the archives through a critical lens?
And thank you so much, Mark. Before I hand it off to Janice to give this next update, I just want to note that we're so excited about this series. that Mark just described to you, because it's going to be a resource that will live online for anyone to refer to as they're really trying to do in themes and then develop programming and initiatives for Revolution NJ. So we're really excited to see that happen this summer. Yeah, so I'll hand it off to you.
Yes, thank you. So I will mention our staff and some of our board members who are here today. We have Susan Kaufman, who's our communications director. We have Amy Osterhout, who's our program manager. We have Roseanne Butterfield, who's our office manager. We also have Sally Lane, who's our board chair, Patrick Murray, who's on our board and on the steering committee with Sally, and Laura Schwack, who's another board member. So, and if I missed anybody, I will say your names later, but thank you. So as the private partner of Revolution NJ, Crossroads is developing the campaign that will raise funds to address needs that were revealed in the visitor readiness assessment. The initial step in the fundraising campaign is to assess the feasibility of raising a targeted funding amount and identifying potential donors of significant means. We're working with the Compass Group, a leading national development consulting firm with expertise in building fundraising campaigns from the startup phase. As part of the process, Compass is helping us to identify those with the means and interests to make significant contributions to that effort. And the consulting team will be doing interviews with people who are identified for this feasibility study. During the interviews, Compass will also seek feedback on our case statement, which is a compelling explanation of the Revolution NJ program and the long-term impact it will have on New Jersey's economy, image, historic sites, and educational programs. Feedback will allow us to fine-tune that message before the start of an actual major fundraising campaign. Compass is also working to identify potential startup funds through foundations that provide that kind of funding, which will help us move forward even more quickly. Crossroads is excited to be working with a skilled team like Compass. They've built a successful multi-million-dollar campaign for clients, including the Nature Conservancy of New Jersey, the National Historic Trust, Friends of Acadia, and KIPP, New Jersey. Can you go to the next slide, please? You're going to be hearing during this meeting from Tom Sullivan, who is the CEO of the Princeton Partners Group. As we've been moving through the stages of planning for the 250th, it became clear that we needed a near-term communication strategy to inform and engage the people and groups who are essential to the success of Revolution NJ. Besides the history and heritage community, that includes government officials, potential funders, the state's travel and economic development community, and educators. It's the first step in the process of building the broader integrated marketing plan that will ultimately help us promote Revolution NJ to the general public. Earlier this year, we hired the strategic marketing firm Princeton Partners to develop that strategy. Princeton Partners is a strategic branding and marketing communications agency that works with businesses, governmental agencies, and not-for-profits to create big ideas and enduring impact to advance people's lives. The agency has special expertise in helping public-private partnerships to create and promote programs in areas including education, community development, wellness, and economic development. Tom Sullivan, CEO of Princeton Partners, is here today to share insights on building the Revolution NJ brand. Tom?
Janice, thank you so much for that kind introduction. Great to meet everybody here. I consider this an honor and a privilege. As a fan of New Jersey and a bit of a student of history in my past, I really am excited to be part of this initiative at an initial phase of helping craft the foundation of a communication strategy going forward. And we're going to talk about today the importance of strategic and branding communications to this effort, which is unique. And I'll explain that in a minute. But I'm looking at the people who are here and introducing themselves. I've met some of you. I've spoken with some of you. Looking forward to speaking with more of you. What a great participation from the education community and from our cultural and heritage councils and experts. Thank you for your service. This is truly an opportunity to advance the success of Revolution NJ. And I think defining success has been going on, and it's pretty bold. Having read the strategic and interpretive frameworks and the background information, we've been engaged with the Revolution NJ leadership for the last couple months. So today really is going to be a high-level, fun, I hope, conversation. So take notes. We're all communicators, right? We're all experts in communications. But I hope to learn something different today about what a brand is and why it's important to this effort. So Greer, thank you for toggling through this PowerPoint for me. And let's get started, okay? Next slide, please. We're going to cover 4 areas here. A quick recap of Revolution NJ's mission, goals, process, and timelines. We're going to study and think about what is the role of brand communication, so we're all on the same page. Now, we're going to go a little deeper on why it is so important to the success of this effort. We're going to go into just what is a brand in general and a couple examples out there in the world that you'll be familiar with, but really a closer look at the Revolution NJ brand and what we want it to mean so that we all have the same interpretation of that meaning, which is broad and deep and exciting. So we're going to take a look at what Revolution NJ means, and all of us are going to be helping to shape that brand experience. Next slide. So you all are familiar with this logo. We're going to talk about why a logo is important, but it's not the brand. It is a representation of the brand. Brand is a deeper idea. And this logo is exciting. It was, as you are probably familiar, the result of a competition. And when I saw this logo, I got excited about it because it immediately signified to me the crossroads. New Jersey is at the crossroads. And it symbolized the tagline, engage the past and shaping the future. Engage the past, shape the future. I look at that star as the North Star of the future. I see the crossroads there as coming from the past and moving us forward. And so that's my interpretation. What we want to do is have a unified interpretation of what that means and everything behind that facing identity, okay? Let's start with the mission. So you're familiar with the mission, but let's really set the context here. Revolution NJ will advance the role that history plays in public discourse, community engagement, education, tourism, and scholarship in New Jersey. That is a bold mission. And that's just the first part. To really think about what this brand mission, if achieved, might have an impact on this state going forward, to the people of the state, and maybe looking back 50 years from now, it will have had a role, a very important role in all of these arenas. How are we going to accomplish that? That mission is accomplished through a series of initiatives that explore the history of the American Revolution, its context, its legacy. Revolution NJ will galvanize diverse audiences statewide into embracing the enduring value and relevance of history. Now, we say statewide, but we're not excluding people outside the state. In fact, much of this mission is devoted to making New Jersey a beacon, a light, a destination that will be not just a destination for American heritage visitors, but visitors of all types and international visitors as well. Next slide, please. I won't read these strategic goals to you. You're familiar with them. I highlighted in the bold the key ideas. This is about diversity, inclusiveness, making sure that we understand how to interpret this from all different perspectives. Organizational capacity, How do you build organizational capacity for any kind of brand, any kind of business, any kind of destination? Achieving organizational capacity is going to create a momentum that will build self-sustaining economic engines to ensure its future development. Heritage tourism is a big part of our economy. It should be bigger. In New Jersey, it's probably half of what it should be relative to peer states. And if successful, it'll be a lot bigger piece of the economic pie to help fund that organizational capacity and tell that diverse and inclusive story about our past, particularly the New Jersey's role in our past and our future. Elevating the value that is placed on history education, K-12, and in our colleges and universities. History is amazing, but you have to experience it. I often tell my wife, I said, you know, I know you really appreciate nonfiction. I appreciate nonfiction. She appreciates fiction, particularly historical fiction. I said, but you can't make up what happened in the American Revolution. You just can't make these stories up. In fact, it's stranger and more exciting to me in many ways than fiction. Demonstrating how understanding the complexity of our history helps us respond to our present day, the challenges that we're facing as a society today. It's truly an amazing fabric of complexity in New Jersey. And then increasing public and private funding. That's what we want so that we can fuel this engine going forward. So those are strategic goals and the highlights that I like to think about that will be driving success. When you think about how we're going to tell the story, really these icons are taking the different areas, not necessarily the specific themes that were laid out prior, but you know, when you think about an event and a date on a calendar and it's episodic and maybe it's a one-time, we want Revolution NJ's brand to connect all of the events, all of the places, all of the sites, all of the happenings, to make it part of New Jerseyans' routine and truly experience something enriching. To impact education and scholarship so that more funding goes into scholarship, so that more resources for teachers are provided, so there's flexibility and creativity, which is limitless in the education community, so that children of all ages and adults of all ages can engage in a way that is meaningful. Civic and community engagement, of course, is one of the goals that we have here. And we want that to be creative and impactful and innovative, all coming out of the ideals and the interpretive goals and framework of the Revolution NJ brand. Heritage tourism, that's what we all see. That's what we feel. That's what we're excited about. And heritage tourism will now have a broader meaning because it will connect the dots to all of these themes. And it will create extensions that impact education and scholarship. And so that scholarship informs and elevates heritage tourism. And so that heritage tourism impacts civic and community engagement. This really is about an integrated mix of assets. Next slide, please. What's interesting about the problem we're facing today is much of the product has not been fully developed. In fact, I would say the majority of the product has not been fully developed and is not fully accessible in the kind of high quality way that we want New Jersey's presentation to be. So when we think about a commemoration in 2026, okay, that's one thing 5 years down the road. But how do we turn that product into reality? We're not selling a product that is fully baked yet. So it all starts with the goals. We talked about the goals, and those have been defined very well. But in order for that realization to take place, several things need to happen. The ideation process has to explore all of the possibilities, to make the connections, and to think about what the wow is going to be from a consumer perspective. An everyday person, not the expert, not the historian, but the everyday person. What that impact is going to be in their minds and hearts. And with that ideation process going underway and being developed, concepts begin to be defined, and they address product and place and programming and content and partners and all sorts of extensions. When the working groups are working on those concepts, they're doing so with an eye toward ensuring that there is alignment with strategic goals, the interpretive framework, identifying the resource needs, ensuring that there's high feasibility of success, and measuring what kind of audience impact we want to have. How we're going to tell the story so that history is inclusive, ensuring that there is authenticity and accuracy with a perspective that really takes into account all that diversity, equity, and inclusion has to offer as we define it in today's world, and the synergies that come across all of that. And simply, if we have the plans and the concepts right and well designed and properly budgeted and funded, then the production will take place, the launch will happen, it will impact the civic and community engagement that we want, the educational engagement. And some of those goals will initially be realized, and then more of those goals will be realized until the entire mosaic of the state of New Jersey continues to elevate the achievement of new and higher goals. So what a brand does is it starts with an idea and it results in a product, but that product impacts a consumer experience. Everything has to be built around the concept of engaging specific audiences. Next slide, please. I'll move through a little bit more quickly now. Any brand communication strategy has to start with alignment inside out. So the people on this call represent probably members of all these four circles, these groups. And I think of the inner core here as supporting the essential stakeholders. So when we have the leadership and the state partners, the leadership being Revolution NJ, which is the partnership between the Historical Commission, the Jersey Historical Commission, and Crossroads, and all of the state partners, these external stakeholders are going to be supported by that group of leadership and by the public and private funding that takes place. And typically the order of communications is in this fashion. It's not the perfect example because public and private partners will be brought in earlier. I'm going to talk about the timeline in a minute, but at the end of the day, that outer circle is the general public. We want New Jersey residents and out-of-state and international visitors to come away from Revolution NJ and experience in New Jersey and say, wow, I want to come back. This is amazing. Next slide, please. So that general timeline is we looked at what was happening over the last couple of years, and a lot has happened. We see 4 stages here. Right now, we're still in research, strategic planning, formation stage, but production preparation and pre-launch is a multi-year process. The commemoration is big, but it's just the beginning of a stage of sustaining and scaling that into the future. And the funding is all designed with this timeline that takes it out to 2033. To go a little deeper on the next slide, I won't read this to you other than to say a lot of work has been done in research, strategic planning, and formation. So you can see for yourself there where we are today, working groups, lots of ideation, visioning and case statement development, feasibility studies, resource planning, capital campaign, public funding. But as things are produced and launched at the commemoration and pre-commemoration and sustained at scale, they are all in those buckets that we've talked about, events and reenactments and scholarly programs and support, debate, civic and community engagement, heritage tourism. Marketing and advertising will support that. And marketing and advertising comes out of a brand strategy, which we're going to turn our attention to now. And it will do something that's very important. Next slide, please. It will create brand awareness. And over time, the public will be engaged. And the tighter we have our brand definition, our brand strategy, our brand communications elements and assets together, and so that there's alignment from leadership to all partners and a quality execution on the product itself, then the public will be highly engaged and it will be an efficient utilization of resources to create that brand awareness. That brand awareness is necessary before people can engage and visit and return. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about the role of brand communications in a little bit more fun academic sense, okay? Next slide, please. You all see this word. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the brand. It's a car brand. And I'm just going to ask you to think to yourself, what one adjective that described the promise of this brand comes to mind? So as you think about that, I'm sure many of you said safety. There's a reason for that. Volvo's strategy was to own that idea and to deliver safety in its product for decades. And not just in its final product and how it builds its product. It influenced the entire industry with that promise, but how it produces that product in a safe way in manufacturing with the highest safety records, how it sources all of their original equipment. It's all about safety as well in the entire supply chain. So Volvo's delivered on that promise quite well. Next slide, please. A little closer to home, some fun brands. I drink Wawa coffee, and once in a while I'll splurge and get a Starbucks. But these two brands side by side begin to tell you that even in the same category, coffee, you have very different feelings associated with these brands because a brand exists in the mind. It sets an expectation. It sets an expectation for not just the product, but the experience itself. So in the case of Wawa, I enjoy Wawa coffee, but I can customize it without a barista, and I can do my own blend of dark Kona and maybe a little bit of decaf Colombian. Starbucks, if I'm going to splurge a little bit, but I need some time to bring my laptop or to read the New York Times and relax and to feel part of something special, and I want to treat myself, I'm at Starbucks. So if I'm in a hurry, I go to Wawa. But if I want to really relax and think and enjoy, I'm going to go to Starbucks. I'm sure you might feel some of the same feelings about that. Next slide, please. So you can see the difference in brands. It's more than a logo. Those logos behind Wawa and Starbucks and Volvo are more about what they stand for, what experience they're bringing to people. And so the Revolution NJ brand is more than a logo. It is not just who we are in New Jersey. It's what do we stand for? We have goals. We have an interpretive framework. It's what we do and how we do it. And what we do and how we do it is going to articulate in a very authentic and guttural way why New Jersey is unique and special, not just in the role it played in the revolution, but how it's going to shape the future. Next slide, please. Thank you, Greer. So there are some strategic advantages of a strong brand. There really are foundational advantages at the top here. The first three. One is setting the internal and external expectations, which is what the process has been accomplishing so far and what we're talking about today. It also helps to guide the goals, ideas, strategies, and tactics to bring it to life. It creates cohesion and collaboration across the teams. All the working groups are not just working groups thinking about their specific role, but they're thinking about ideas that have extensions to all of the other teams as well, so that the assets and events are enriched by an integrated set of things. Now, the next tier here is where the rubber meets the road with human beings. We want to inspire recognition in that brand. When you see the Revolution NJ brand, after you've experienced something from a Revolution NJ product, event, reenactment, educational program, scholarly debate, you're going to come away with an emotional idea, a connection, and an expectation that sets up the next expectation. That's the foundation for ongoing engagement. So each interaction with a brand can enhance that brand. If the quality of that interaction and the quality of that content is less than standard, it will diminish that brand. But if it's high quality, it will enable not only ongoing engagement, it will spread the word. Word of mouth is what our communications ecosystems are all built around now. So social sharing and advocacy and inviting participants, not just your friends and your family, but your community at large to participate. And that is really the goal of the Revolution NJ brand. And if all of that happens, something happens that's special. We create scalable and sustainable value. We create momentum around the Revolution NJ brand. Next slide, please. There is a strategic branding framework. I'm not going to get into this. branding is actually a pretty well-developed art and a science, and it starts with positioning. So what is the unique positioning of New Jersey, not just in the Revolution, the last 250 years in shaping American history, in shaping New Jersey? What were the people like in the past that have influenced what we're experiencing today? But that positioning, which makes New Jersey unique relative to other states and other places and other experiences, will be shaped into promises for each audience, propositions that will communicate what those promises are in specific times, events, and programs, with proof in terms of the product itself that delivers on those value propositions. And how we present it in New Jersey, our personality, is really critical. New Jersey has a personality. This is the most diverse state. It's the state with the densest population, yet it has beautiful farmland and amazing landscapes. It's diversity in its landscapes. And we have an attitude of can-do in New Jersey. We are an innovation state. We're a state that doesn't turn down any challenge. And we're a state that serves the world. So there's a lot of special things about New Jersey that will be articulated in the Revolution NJ brand. And how we present that to the world through communications, through channels, through people, through brand ambassadors, through every New Jerseyan who understands this Revolution NJ brand, moving into the future, a brighter future, that's going to be important. And that's what a branding framework is. And bringing that to life is not an easy thing, but it is a doable thing if we're all aligned on the product. Next slide, please. Here's an example. So our company had the privilege of working with Jersey Fresh for many years. A couple years ago, we introduced a website, and it was really exciting because it got some national recognition, because I think for the first time, we took an agricultural product that's basically certified by New Jersey. New Jersey Fresh is not just a logo. To be a producer of product in New Jersey, it could be any product that we produce. It's not just your typical corn, your tomatoes. It's also wine. It's blueberries and cranberries. It's every kind of produce you can think of, but they have to meet standards, freshness standards. Those have to be certified. They have to be tested. They have to be maintained. So for every product, there is a standard of essentially field to table, or field to farm stand, or field to the retail outlet. And that brand is very powerful. It's been around for 40 years. It is, we've done brand awareness research on the Jersey Fresh brand several times. It is one of the most powerful brands for a produce brand in the nation, bar none. So that's exciting, because the Jersey Fresh brand is a local example of something that we all appreciate. Next slide, please. So what does that mean for the Revolution NJ brand? Let's talk about this just a little bit more. This idea of engaging the past and shaping the future is a big idea. It's a ambitious idea, and I think the structure that you all have been working on for the last couple of years is truly admirable and well thought out. Next slide, please. I took all of that with our team and said, what do we think all of this means? Let's just create a statement of a brand goal. And we simplified it this way: to make New Jersey history relevant and transformative to those inside and outside the state. That's just something that helps me. This is not an official brand goal. But essentially, this idea of transformation, shaping the future, doesn't take place without an understanding of the past and understanding how that relates to today. So that's a big goal. How do we accomplish that goal? Next slide, please. We make sure that every branded event, educational resource, reenactment that has the Revolution NJ brand meets certain kinds of criteria, that delivers something special, something really special. So when you see a Revolution NJ logo at a particular site, and you're a consumer, and you've been to some of these sites, you're going to know right away out of the gate, wow, something significant is here. Something I should pay attention to. Something I could learn from. Something that mattered to not only history today, but actually matters to what happens here and how New Jersey's been shaped today. Something relevant that I can actually learn how it connects to today and the future, to me as a human being, regardless of my walk of life, my community, my background. Something relevant to me. Something that's authentic because we know it was real, and it was not just an event, but it was real people behind that particular case. And what I find fascinating, and I want to thank everybody here who we've been talking with about the different resources that have been made available. It's just amazing to learn that New Jersey is where much of it happened. So when Washington spent 25% of his time here, and we had over 600 military skirmishes and battles. In fact, there's a booklet that Sally, you sent me the other day that was just terrific, that demonstrated to me that, wow, it's not just those battles and skirmishes that were published by David Munn, but it's the people. We know who the major was in the British regiment. We know who the rebels were that were captured. We know who was killed in an action. This is an amazing history. We know it happened all across New Jersey, and it happened continuously from the very beginning to the very end of the war. And it devastated this country, this state, and it affected tens of thousands of people. And it was really a civil war. And this is something that I'm beginning to be intrigued about more and more. I had no idea about the type of diversity that we had in New Jersey, the ethnic diversity, the religious diversity, the political diversity. So this is something special that we need to bring together and to really make it accessible. So every Revolution NJ brand event, product, resource is high quality, authentic, documented, and when it meets that, it will be official because it will be certified as a Revolution NJ experience. That's the goal of this brand communications strategy. Next slide. So all of that's pretty theoretical, but how do we make this a brand designed for engagement? This is where people connect with a brand idea. That's what it's all about, engagement. There's really three things that we want to talk about with engagement. Next slide. The first thing we want to talk about is a brand that emphasizes narratives. So here's a photo. This is from the 10 Crucial Days in Trenton. Our team has participated and supported the promotion of the 10 Crucial Days. And it's pretty exciting what goes on down there. And this is an event with children, and they use puppeteering to mimic what happened in terms of the Delaware crossing and so forth. But really what you have is storytelling that elicits curiosity. Kids can be amazed and engaged emotionally. But the takeaway of this is, oh, we're on a journey together. Real people experience this, and we can participate in this journey. Second slide, or the second point on the next slide, is a brand that fosters societal engagement. When you think about a site, and this is my personal experience, when I see the combs that people used, the silverware or the spoons and the mugs that they had, I began to think, wow, a real person lived here. Their family was here. Their barn was burned down, or they had to run away from this home, and this was rebuilt, because that's the story. This gives me a sense of shared humanity. Now I begin to connect with, wow, what happened here? It's not so much the bricks and mortar, but the people's lives that lived here and how that came to life. And it gives me a sense of place in history. But also, if it's done well, it's going to give me a sense of pride in New Jersey. And wow, this is an amazing community of communities within our state. Oh, I need to understand my past, because that will help me working with my friends to chart our future. So we want that kind of engagement to happen at that local level. and connect the dots. And finally, the next slide, a brand that invites personal engagement. So it doesn't matter who you are, kids of all ages, but if you're engaging in a living history farm and understanding how people grew fruits and vegetables and what they harvested and how they sourced food, especially during a time of scarcity. And here's a child from that same 10 Crucial Days event pulling the boat across the Delaware. And it's just a marvelous thing. And the parents just are totally engaged with this experience. And they're encouraged to continue the conversation with their children. So we want personal engagement to be connecting all the dots to our history. And that's what makes it real. That's what makes people want to learn more. Okay, finally, I think we're about the last slide or two. This slide, we have two more, I think, makes us question, all of us, what are we going to do to help bring this brand to life? How are we going to really help people engage the past to shape the future? That's the big question at hand. That's the product we're delivering and creating and connecting with. And finally, I'm going to leave you with where we're at, because today I know, and the next slide, Greer, if you could advance that, there's a lot going on here. We have a complex history. This is complicated. We live in a complex time now. Our whole world is questioning our values, our connections. We're deconstructing. We're trying to understand how to harmonize, how to advance, how to create real meaning in our own communities. And that's a tough job. That is a tough job, but it's a necessary job. And I know the people on this call and the Historical Commission and Revolution NJ, the historians, the cultural sites, the heritage sites, you all understand this. This is the diverse history we have here. And let's use our diversity to our strength. And remember, we need to elevate that story in a way that creates an amazing vision for each of the goals. So the working groups are now going into that visioning stage. They started that process in the last couple of weeks. There's all sorts of support and guidance for that with the advisory council, with the steering committee, with experts. Over the next several months, this brand, Revolution NJ, think of it as a work in progress. You don't put the Good Housekeeping seal on the product until it's been inspected, until it's been verified and scientifically measured, right? And it represents quality. That's what we want for the Revolution NJ brand. So we'll be doing a brand readiness survey. You'll be seeing that in the coming months. Brand guidelines need to be developed. This is a work in progress. Bringing that brand communication strategy and framework to life requires a lot of work. So this logo is not going to be delivered anytime soon to any organization anytime soon until we're ready. So there'll be submission requirements. We'll have guidelines on proper use and how that funding plays into that utilization of the brand, which will be valuable in and of itself. How it will be distributed, how it will be applied. There are guidelines for every brand. We studied the Olympics. We studied the NFL. There's a lot of IP protection around world-class brands. And I think by putting this foundation in place, making sure we have great quality brand guidelines ready to go in the first half of next year, while everybody's inventing the product that will live behind the brand, will create a synergy that we just can't imagine today. But it will accomplish those goals done right. So thanks for your patience, and thank you for the opportunity to present some thoughts. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And not just for me, but for the whole group, for everybody.
Tom, thank you and your team for putting together such a terrific presentation and for all your hard work so far, and also what we expect to happen going forward. Again, please put some of your questions in the chat. We'd be happy to answer those. If anyone has questions concerning the presentation, or also what Sarah and Mark and I went over today.
Janice, while we're while we're waiting for folks to type in some questions, I'd love to pose a question to Tom, and that is, Tom, are you aware of any similar initiatives to Revolution NJ at the state level around history? This, you restated our mission, I think, in a really interesting and provocative way, making history relevant to everyone. Do you know of any other states who've conducted a statewide branding initiative like ours?
That's a great question. I know that New York State has been pretty sophisticated in thinking about their brand. I think of New York immediately. They have a new license plate. Are you familiar with it?
No, I don't.
Yeah, so they launched a new license plate. Studying that, the Empire State is what we all think of as New York State. But they were not satisfied they were doing a good enough job in really helping people engage across the state. So you have Upper New York State, and you have the Finger Lakes, and you have the Niagara region, and the state's pretty interesting when you examine the state of New York. And then you have New York City. So what they did with the license plate, and out of their research, and this was a process, and I'm sure it was a grueling process, but they have a new plate, and the plate shows on the left side a little a depiction of Niagara Falls, a fading of the rolling hills of Mid-State, and of course the Statue of Liberty, which always, I'm not happy that New Jersey doesn't own the Statue of Liberty, but I'll take credit for it. But and then a little bit of the skyline where Freedom Tower is prominent. So they've done a nice job, and they did a lot of work around that. But the goal here was to engage people in tourism. Now, the tourism strategy that came out of that is very much following along the lines of making sure people understand the diversity that they have to offer in New York State. New Jersey, on the other hand, and Kevin and I did a study of this a few years ago, and we actually presented it to the state treasurer and the governor's office of New Jersey's tourism strategy. It's highly dependent on the Jersey Shore, highly dependent. And when you look at that, there's a rationale for that. There's an ROI there. But then we compared New Jersey's investment in tourism, not just the peer states, but across the country, and we found it was lacking. Then we looked at the ROI of tourism, and lo and behold, guess what? The ROI for heritage tourism, which attracts families in higher degree, is actually higher. So if we can accomplish a one-night stay versus a daily visit on the way from Philadelphia to New York or to Boston, particularly during the commemoration, the vision here is that, no, you need to spend time in New Jersey. This is a one master theme park. Virginia has been very good historically. I've studied the economic development of about 6 or 7 regions. Texas 1, Florida economic development, Virginia, and their various subdivisions. Virginia is for lovers is Virginia, right? Why does Virginia own tourism from heritage? So I think you're bringing up a good question. One of the things that we are examining as part of our process of brand communication strategy is what's going on in other states. And an initial kind of perusal of that, it seems like many of these states are just treating the commemoration as a big fireworks display. Okay, to their loss, to our gain. I think it's really critical that New Jersey owns the East Coast. We own the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic region. We got to put New Jersey on the map. And so that's part of the process of really studying what the other states are doing. Pennsylvania's got some interesting things going. Of course, Philadelphia has the sites. But, let's think about this. You had the British, had this conversation with Maxine, and she's reminded me, the British basically based in New York. Americans were basically based, the colonials, they were based in Philadelphia. What was in between? It's New Jersey. Who fed both of those centers? New Jersey. Who got destroyed in terms of the foraging and so forth? New Jersey. Thank you, New Jersey. I think we have a special story, so I think you bring up a great point. We need to look at the competitive framework of the other states and ensure that we have a unique value proposition, a unique set of things and connections. I think the mobile app that you guys have been working on to connect the tours and the pathways and the engagements is just phenomenal. I think it's unique, and well, it's being done in other places, but they're not connecting the dots the way you are in New Jersey here, Sarah. So I think that's terrific.
Thanks so much, Tom. So we do have some great questions coming in. I'll answer one that's quickly answered from Tim Hart, and that is, did the New Jersey budget, and I'm sure you mean the FY22 budget, Tim, fully fund the promises of the revolution? Well, here's what I can tell you. We did receive in the budget the $500,000 that was envisioned in the initial legislation from FY 2018. So I hope that answers your question, Tim, but please repose it if I didn't. And now, Tom, I think this one is for you. Do you think that the brand, and it comes from Cynthia Forster, Bergen County. Hello, Cynthia. Do you think that the brand is most effective if it covers a county-wide area, or is it thought about for each individual organization? So that.
Well, I'll tell you what, when you look at David Munn's book on the battles and skirmishes in New Jersey in the Revolution, Cynthia, you're from Bergen County. He lumps Bergen County as one group. And what's interesting about Bergen County, where I grew up, and I experienced that's where I got some of my history bug from. I was very proud of our role in the Revolution. The streets, it's really amazing what happened in Bergen County, and a successful retreat was key to a successful revolution. Let's face it. But it's my opinion that connecting the dots locally to the county is a great strategy. It's very hard for people in New Jersey to get out of their own county. We're a very diverse state. We have lots of small towns. It's one of our strengths, and there's so much to do locally. But to get somebody in their car and to go 20 minutes down the road to see something special, in Bergen County, you can practically walk to some of these places if you live on Kinderkamak Road. So I think it's important to think about each county. The counties have their cultural and history organizations. Absolutely, connect the dots there, and think of it as a network of networks, and then connect the regions. So what happened in New Brunswick and in Central Jersey and in Raritan? What happened in Morristown, Jockey Hollow? Think about connecting the regions of the state, which are already organized, right? And Red Bank in South Jersey. So I think the connection strategy is a really good idea. I don't think there's any one answer. I think the network will be built. But if you think about the connections, what's going to happen is you're going to benefit from more private sector engagement, more volunteer engagement. You're going to get more money by connecting the dots. If you think of yourself as a silo, I think you're going to be really disappointed. Make sure your individual site is phenomenal and delivers on the interpretive framework, but connect the dots, because the more we connect, the more we engage, and it keeps moving the brand experience forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tom. Now, here's a great question, which comes from Ruth Ann Sanger. She wants to know what your next step is.
We're working. We're constantly working. The next step is multiple steps. We're doing research. We're investigating stakeholder groups. We're charged with putting together a communication strategy that is efficient for all stakeholder groups. So, people don't have a lot of time to engage in lots of emails anymore. So we're charged with building out the communications channel strategy for each stakeholder group, ensuring that we have databases of those stakeholder groups put together, ensuring that they have their communications needs and connections one of those things, one of the benefits of that is ideation and collaboration. So what happens at one place, everybody learns from one another. This is the neat thing about New Jersey as a state. As the innovation state, and I did a study on this once, our diversity is really what's created the innovation. Diversity of thought as much as anything else. So I think that answers the question. Did I answer the question?
Yes, I think you did. Very good.
Okay.
And now another really interesting question that maybe you and Janice might like to address. And that is, how will we combine the temporary branding, the temporary, I'm using air quotes here, branding of Revolution NJ with the permanent branding for Crossroads of the American Revolution?
I don't think you want to combine them. If I heard that correctly, the temporary branding, I don't think of branding as this is a preview of the brand. And branding, as I said earlier, is a bigger idea than a logo, right? There's everything else behind the brand. So it's the brand product, it's the brand experience, it's the brand communication, it's every interaction with the brand, it's the brand content and the storytelling. So Revolution NJ is the name. That is a brand. The tagline is the tagline. That's not going away. We have a logo, right? It's that that's not ready for prime time yet. The permanency of it will come as the funding is allocated, as the product comes up to speed, as the site priorities are developed out, and that brand will then be associated with those sites, right? So I hope I'm not being unclear. It's a tough one because your Revolution NJ idea here is a quality idea. And think about it this way. I've done some rebrands of corporations, a big bank on a couple of occasions, and they're going to unveil a new logo. And 200 branches statewide, or next on a Monday morning, the covers come off, there's a new brand. There's something to be said for a brand strategy launch where it's coordinated. It's coordinated so that it's not just seeped out a little bit at a time. And having the organizations themselves understand that and understand how it fits into the larger plan. So the marketing communications plan hasn't even been developed, hasn't been funded. Those campaigns have to be resourced by partners and vendors and so forth. So that's going to happen down the road. Right now, it's about making sure the product's the right product.
And I guess I can add that, Revolution NJ is our public-private partnership. Crossroads remains. It's not that, the brand doesn't take away from the Crossroads brand. So I think, we're continuing and we're going to be working on this initiative. And there's also, as we're talking about it, there's also the America 250 and, being able to use some of that in New Jersey as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I don't think it takes away from the branding of Revolution NJ. I think it enhances the fact, as you were pointing out, Tom, that it does sort of show the crossroads in that Revolution NJ depiction, as far as our logo. So I think they work together.
So exactly, Janice, and I'm glad you brought that up because, there are corporate brands, and that's, and then there are product brands. So, Disney has dozens of brands. There's precedent for this. Different companies have different brands. Procter & Gamble, my partner, Kevin, introduced brands for Procter & Gamble. So they have product brands. Think of Revolution NJ as the big idea for New Jersey. It's the communications idea. And there's a lot packed into that. But Crossroads is an organization. Revolution NJ is like a good housekeeping seal. It's like an Olympics rings. It's the idea that will be associated with these quality experiences and products around the framework.
And I think Patrick also wanted to chime in on this one. Patrick Murray,
Yes. From the Crossroads perspective here is that, to Paul's question, is that there is an entity that exists, Crossroads of the American Revolution National Heritage Area, which and State Heritage Area, by the way, as well. We're designated as both. That exists and will continue to exist, as well as the concept of the Crossroads of the American Revolution, which is where the name came from and what that all stands for. That is a heritage tourism entity that will continue on this collaborative effort building around 2026 and that period. To Paul's question specifically, and this is outside of what Tom is doing right now with the Revolution NJ brand, is that we have heritage tourism consultants who are also looking right now at the infrastructure that we build for this going forward and how it's going to live beyond that and how it's going to have a national presence or a regional presence that will be sustainable. That will live beyond Revolution NJ. So we are actually looking at that question very intently right now to ensure that those things do work together and that it lives beyond this particular effort that's based around the 2026 anniversary.
Thank you to everyone. So Nancy Pirouar has shared with us that there is a new group called Emerging Revolutionary War that is bringing people to New Jersey in November for a bus tour of Princeton and Trenton. And she recommends that we engage with them. They have a national reach. So thank you, Nancy. We'll definitely look into that for sure. John Kaiser asks, how do we get funding for the research to prepare sites to comply with this program? So let me take a stab at that one. First of all, John, I'm not sure the verb comply is the one I would choose. We hope that you'll want to engage with us and come on this journey with us. And I do want to point out that the New Jersey Historical Commission does have a grant program, and we are delighted and really grateful to the legislature and the governor for giving us an increase in grant funds in this fiscal year. So I do want to encourage all of you who are thinking about where we are going to get funding for some of these projects and programs that we want to do. Please take a look at our guidelines. The guidelines for the next round of project grants will be out in the late winter, just after the first of the year. And because of that increase in funding, we will have more available for programs, history programs around the state. There's also, of course, the New Jersey Council for the Humanities, which also offers grant support that may be relevant as you think about this. And then the third thing I want to mention is that our grant program includes two different components. One is grants that come directly from us for groups that meet the eligibility for that. But then we have re-grant programs in every single county. So if your organization hasn't been applying for support at either the county level or directly from the commission, and you want to dive into some of this, now's the time to do that. You're in a great spot. As we sit here in 2022, you've got time to get some of that grant funding and start working on new initiatives to engage with our Revolution NJ interpretive framework and goals. And again, we mentioned the professional development series. That's part of why we're doing that, is to also give you more resources to use to think about what kinds of projects you might like to undertake. So in addition to the 7 webinars that Mark described to you with our terrific troupe of scholars, we also will be offering other professional development opportunities that will be live, hopefully in person, where we can really unpack some of these bigger concepts, number one, and think about how they might play out in history programs of all different types. And then we also are going to provide some opportunities for folks to come together and network. and talk about, share ideas, and also look for partnership opportunities as you think about some of the programs that you might like to do. So I hope all that's helpful. Of course, there are other funding opportunities on the private side too. And as you can see, one of our big goals is to encourage more private investment in history in the state. Anyone else want to chime in on that funding question? All right. There's some other great information here from Meredith Barnes on John Newton from the First New Jersey, so please do check that out. So Barbara Lamort has joined us too, and she asks, we talked about the issues of small sites with Mark. We're all volunteer. I don't know if Tom or Janice would like to address that, but Mark, I wonder if you'd like to come back on and maybe talk a little bit about the handbook that we're working on to really address some of the questions that we've been hearing about the interpretive framework and how to really use it. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, we've held a couple of rollout sessions for our frameworks, and we got a lot of input from the public and folks who attended those sessions. And it really showed us that we do need to create perhaps an additional document, which we're referring to as a handbook, to help smaller sites who might feel kind of constrained by the resources that they have in achieving these larger strategic and interpretive framework goals we've outlined. And this handbook is really going to kind of provide a couple of case studies and ways in which folks can brainstorm on how, not having to like reinvent the entire wheel, but how to like actually bring in some of these interpretive themes into already existing programs, and how to sort of create I guess like a pathway forward for folks to not feel overburdened by this initiative that we're working towards. And we'll be working on that in the coming months, and we really want folks to feel that if you do have an all-volunteer staff or limited resources, that won't preclude you from being part of this larger initiative. And the guidebook is pulling from a number of other nationwide initiatives that are already using their own guidebooks, specifically thinking of the AASLH, I always get that one mixed up. I think I got it, thanks, Sarah, which is the local and state historical society organizations. We're pulling from resources in the public history, the inclusive historian. I'm really trying to create a document that would help folks not feel overburdened or overwhelmed by the frameworks.
And I think I would add that, Barbara, that we've been having some conversation with Tom's team about the future and thinking about, might there be opportunities for toolkits or ways to do things for websites going forward, with identifying additional funding to help the smaller sites that way. So it is something, again, we're starting to think about and do certainly have that in mind. So I don't know are we ready to go to the next slide? Or are there other questions that we want to address?
I think we've hit all the questions in the chat here. Some other folks have also shared some additional information and resources there. So please, everyone, if you haven't checked it out, check out the chat. And as always, all of you bring great ideas and information along with you. Okay.
So we are just going to the end here. If we can pull up the next update slide. What?
Yes, sorry. Give me 1 minute. The slides got a little discombobulated here.
So I can tell you that our next update meeting is going to take place on Wednesday, October 20th. Normally, when we tell you about our next meeting, we also give you a time for the meeting. And what we're doing is we're going to be sending out a survey. It's a separate survey than what Tom's team is going to be sending you. So this will be coming shortly. And it'll be an online survey to assess your preference for how and when we have these meetings. Obviously, we've been meeting remotely due to COVID. You know, do we want to, you know, do something in the future in person? What time of day? Is it during the day? Is it in the evening? So please watch your email for a link to that survey and please respond. We're really grateful to you for your input on that. And I think the last slide is just some of our staff contact information. And thanks again to Sue Cuffman from my staff for working with Mark on our portion of the slides. And please feel free to contact us with questions or suggestions. And we really want to thank you all for participating today, and especially thank our speaker, Tom Sullivan, and his incredible staff at Princeton Partners. Thank you all very much.